Hello everyone, welcome to today's lesson. I'm Miss Zulu and I'm going to be teaching English. Specifically today we're going to have to look at an email. I hope the lesson will be as interesting for you as it is for me. Okay, so we are going to look at reading and writing, specifically email writing. If you are a student taking English second language, some of you might go for extended, whilst others might go for core. Nevertheless, the email difference has to do just with the number of words at the end of the day. Okay, we begin with a layout. So the very first thing you have to put into consideration is that the layout for an email has to start with from. You know, when you go to your email address, you click the small arrow up there where it says me. It will bring down some details and it will show you from, which will show you the details as to whom that email is coming from. Okay, and then you have to, which will indicate to whom the email is intended to go to. Then you also have the date, and finally there you get to have the subject. What is the purpose for that email that you are sending to someone? Okay, do not forget, just as when you're writing a letter, to leave a space before you get to your salutation. Okay, so you get to your dear Jen, dear Mary, dear, okay, whichever friend you're writing to or family member. Remember to say, when you're writing an email under Cambridge, it is always informal. Okay, don't forget your comma. Punctuation is very important. If it's dear Jane, then your comma. Okay, under that we get to the main body. Okay, main body, do not indent. Indenting is something that used to be done way back, not anymore. Okay, where you start writing from under the first name that comes after dear, okay, and the only name, of course. You have to make sure to say, when you get to the body, you should have by then read the 3 bullet points and understood them very well in your question, so that when you start thinking about how you're going to plan for your letter or your email, in this case, you have to make sure that all the points have been highlighted. Okay, lastly there, when you're writing your email, you have to consider your signature. A signature does not mean that funny piece of writing that you get to see when people write their letters and they have to sign it off. Okay, but we're talking about how do you end your letter. In this case, because it's informal, you can say all the best. Let's say you're writing to a friend who is about to write their exams, you can say best wishes. Or if it's just an everyday basis type of email where you're not wishing someone well, you can just say with love. Then you end it with your full names, of course. Okay, from there we're saying you have to take note to say the question could either be descriptive or narrative, or a mixture of both the descriptive and the narrative, which we call the descriptive narrative, and it is always informal. Avoid being too informal. That's to say the usage of slang. That will make you lose some points in your piece of writing. Okay, next we take a look at the question here. Okay, this is a question, a typical exam question from a past paper. You can see there's a picture there of a guy, and you can see there's a word there, emergency. Okay, so every time you're given a question, it comes with a picture which helps you to understand the question. It helps to paint a mental picture for what is expected of you. Of course, you have to come up with all the details with the help of the prompts. Okay, so in this case, when you look at the guy in the picture there, his hand is just rubbing his head and it says emergency. What comes to your mind? Okay, so before you even read the question, the picture should stimulate you as to what the question will require of you. So firstly, they were saying you recently helped someone in trouble. Okay, write an email to a friend explaining what happened. In your email, you should, first point, describe where you were and what happened. So your first paragraph there should be able to highlight, okay, a description. When we talk about a description, we're looking at things that are in detail, okay? It's not a narration, but a description. In this case, describe where you were. Okay, what are the things which were around the area where you were? Did you see a car? Did you see a house? Did you see people? What exactly did you see? Anything that has to be described has to be in concrete, okay, and not in the abstract. After you describe what was around that environment, then you have to make sure that you highlight then what happened. And then you get to your next paragraph. Please always remember to paragraph your points. Explain what you did to help. After you saw what was around, after you observed what happened, as far as the prompts there, the pictures are saying emergency. So in your writing, you should be able to bring out the idea of an emergency that took place for you to have felt the need to help out. Okay, the last point there, the third point says, say what you learned from this experience. In as much as you observed what was there, okay, you can say a thing or two about what happened. You can say a thing or two about how you came to the rescue. Do not make yourself the hero of the story, by the way. Simply get straight to the point as to how you came through to help, okay? Say what you learned from this experience. What lesson did you derive from the experience? Let's say there was an old lady who couldn't cross the road. That is not an emergency, no. But we imagine someone who's about to choke, then you decide to give some CPR and the person is resuscitated. That can be described as an emergency. How would you feel then after that? You have to make sure that you bring out your strong opinion as you close off with the last point, okay? The points are always 3, and when you look at the scale of words they were saying 100 to 150, this is restricted only to those who are writing a core paper. If you're writing an extended paper, then be rest assured to say you're going to have 150 to 200 words maximum, okay? Take note, the pictures above may give you some ideas and you should try to use some ideas of your own. Therefore, in as much as the picture acts as a prompt to help you have these mental pictures of what has to take place as you make your scene come to life for the reader or the marker in this case, let it be something that has to have a touch of yourself and not necessarily just sticking to the points that are given. When you add on your own touch, it will help you to improve on, let's say, the overall mark, okay? You could follow all these prompts, but you're not going to get the full marks, because remember, when we say 7 marks for content, okay, yes, content, let's look at it. Did you write your from? Yes. Did you write your to? Okay, we go to the beginning. Did you highlight the from as to whom did that email come from? Okay, to who was it addressed, on what date, the subject, okay, the salutation, okay? All these things were highlighted, but how much of your own ideas have been illustrated in your piece of writing? If you've not done much, you will not get much from there, because we also have to look at the 6 marks that comes after that in terms of your style, your accuracy of the language. Your style has to be reflected by you putting in a little bit more effort than what has been given to you. Okay, take note. The first bullet point there was saying a descriptive will always highlight what can be seen or observed, unlike a narrative which focuses more on what is happening rather than the title details. We look at the example there. He or she walks majestically with a peaceful aura. When you say he or she walks, that is simply a narration of what someone gets to do. But when you say he or she walks majestically, the adjectives remind you to say now you are describing something, okay? Or the way someone does something. Always ensure that you master your adjectives, because when it comes to writing, whether it's an email or a letter, you have to make good use of them for you to come out with a strong descriptive piece of writing. Okay, second point there, do not indent your writing, which I mentioned earlier on. Okay, third point, read and understand the question fully before writing. Do not rush into writing if you have not fully gone through all the instructions for that piece of writing. Okay, observe the word limit. If the word limit for the one who's writing a whole piece of paper says 100 to 150, which is always the case for the last exercise, okay, which is exercise 5 or 6. Okay, in this case, this is exercise 5. Okay, and when you look at 100 and 150, you have to work around that. It shouldn't be less than 100 or more than 150. Otherwise, you will be penalized at the end of the day. Check your punctuation and spelling. This is very important because punctuation can change the meaning of a sentence. Okay? Put your full stops where they're supposed to be, put your commas, and so forth and so on. Make good use of punctuation marks. Okay? Spellings as well. When you misspell something, it can end up becoming ambiguous or simply not having any meaning at all. So check your spellings. The next point they were saying, ensure that you did not leave out any point. When a student receives their piece of paper, mostly they have a habit to rush into writing straight away without fully understanding the piece of writing that they've been given, and this can lead into leaving out points. When we look at these 3 points, we're saying the first one here is saying that you have to describe where you were and what happened, okay? And then you discover that some students can talk about the first one and the last one, leaving out the middle point there, of which that means in your content there you will not be able to score the full 7 marks, because you have to highlight all the 3 points in your piece of writing, and you have to ensure that they are in the order in which they appear. The first one says describe, the second one says explain, the last one says say what you learned from this experience. You cannot start with the last one and then you decide to end with the middle one or the first one. Then your work will not be in order. Okay? The last part there was saying proofread your work before submitting. This is very important so that you make amends in terms of where you may have made some mistakes as you were writing in terms of spelling errors. Okay? You have to make sure to say you check everything thoroughly. If you left out some punctuations, you make sure that the punctuations are done. In any case, when you proofread your work, it helps you to gauge what you could get in terms of the marks. But if you decide to rush and submit your work without going through it, well, at the end of the day, you walk away feeling confident, not knowing to say you actually did not do your task fully. So it is important, as in this case, you go back to the question yet again, you recently helped someone in trouble.
You as the person that has to carry out this task, you do not start using third person language. You go back to the lessons that you were given in terms of pronouns, so it has to be in first person singular. You have to respect the fact that language has rules, and these rules help you to find the full meaning in your piece of writing. Okay, you have to refer to yourself and whoever may have been around that place. You might not necessarily mention names, let alone your name, but you use pronouns and not nouns in this case. I hope today's lesson was interesting for you and that you will be able to write a better email in future. Thank you.